Welcome back, guys. As I was saying, we're going to talk about the social impact of COVID-19. And actually, these are the figures that I was telling you about. This is what is being disclosed today by the government. And GDP dropped 5.2% in the first financial quarter of the year in Spain. I mean, this is actually something that was expected. And this is in the quarterly variation. Obviously, this is bigger if you compare it with the annual variation, because obviously last quarter we were growing. This one actually the economy is halted. It's I think the word in English, the one they were using in Spain, it's hibernar. So, how do you call when animals sleep in winter? Hibern, maybe, I don't know, whatever. By the end of the day, obviously, this was expected. By the end of the day, people are confined to their homes, so not working and not producing. However, the question we're going to ask by the end of the class today is what the recovery is going to look like, whether it's going to be a V shape, or whether it's going to be a U shape, or whether it's going to be an L, and no recovery is going to happen in the short term. So, I mean, as you can see, is actually in quarterly variation, you can see it's actually the biggest drop. I mean, today they were saying it's the biggest drop since the 70s for the Spanish economy. In terms of annual variation, it's actually not as bad as it was in the economic crisis in 2008. However, it's going to be seen. It will depend on how long will it take to get back to normality, the new normality. That's how actually they're framing it here in Spain. How long it takes to get back to that will also translate into what these figures will look like. In terms of unemployment so far during the crisis, I'm saying only because it's a relatively small impact, and I will explain to you why so far. Only 285,000, 600 employees have been destroyed in Spain, which is a relatively low number, and actually has a lot to do with the next number there, 562,900 ERTES. ERTES, I will explain it later, but there is a temporary suspension of the working contract, of job contracts. And this means that actually unemployment rate is gone only from 13.8, that's the figure I saw before in the previous half of the class. It's only gone to 14.4%, which is a very subtle drop. I mean, in terms of the impact is not being felt so far in unemployment. The economic forecast of IMF for Spain in terms of debt, of public debt and deficit, is actually talking about going to, I mean, you see where the public debt was in 2019, 95.5%, which is actually a relatively good figure. I mean, in terms of where we're coming from, it might actually almost grow 20 points there, and structural deficit of 9.5. And we were talking about getting close to 2% before the crisis hit. So in terms of vulnerability, this is something I was mentioning before. We have to realize that actually when an economic crisis hits, the people that are more vulnerable are the ones you can see there. Obviously, women, because of that inequality is persistent in our societies, and we can perfectly see this in terms of job losses when a crisis hit, also in the salary reduction, and who, in terms of a household, if anyone is to lose the job, quite likely is going to be the woman and not the man. So that's another sign of how inequality still exists in our societies, and we still have to fight for it. And actually, the labor market, it's the one that is presenting us the data in this sense. Also, the young, because there are going to be more likely more precarious jobs that are going to be easier to destroy. Low-skilled jobs, and actually there's quite an interesting debate, I'll get into it in a second, but low-skilled jobs are also more vulnerable, and migrants as well. By the end of the day, all these people, not only their jobs are more likely to be destroyed in cases like this, the crisis, but also the savings they might have, the protection net they might have in case of a crisis is smaller than other groups in our society. And that's why we need all these relief packages that we're talking about in our societies, and trying to get them to them, because those are the people that might potentially suffer more in this kind of situation. And this has a lot to do with job polarization, and actually the COVID-19 crisis is a perfect example of it. If you look what people are still working and teleworking, working from home, and what part of society has lost their job, or they are going to temporary suspension of job, or they have a shorten their working hours, you can perfectly understand what has been happening with our societies lately, and how those who have low-skilled jobs and who are more vulnerable, their work is being losing value over time, and we do not realize the importance of that people, and actually have some of them still have to work in these times and they're very precarious situation. And actually these crises allowing us to visualize how these people are taking a bigger risk and normally in low skilled jobs. For example, actually construction and housing has barely stopped. It was stopped for 2 weeks only in Spain. And how that people, I mean, even though they're not adding, actually, in the conference I attended on Tuesday, Bruno Padilla had quite a good professor at St. Paul. He was referring to these people, that these low-skilled people that are more vulnerable as the, I think the word he used was the essential, because we rely on them even though we do not recognize in terms of salary their work. And actually, what I wanted to tell you about job polarization is actually that maybe COVID-19 allow us to visualize this phenomenon better. This is something that if you, I mean, in academia, it's something that we do know that exists, that this job polarization and how we are protecting less these people that have low skilled jobs, these migrants, these women, these youngsters. They're less protected than those who are traditional workers, those insiders of the system, while the outsiders lately are getting less and less protection. And at least, I mean, obviously, this has this dysfunction for our societies, and this is a problem. So by the end of the day, this is a call to action maybe for our governments. Quite unlikely, but at least it will visualize, allow us to visualize to give visibility to this problem. But the other day, quite interesting as well, the welfare packages. I mean, yeah, not welfare. Well, I can say welfare packages or relief packages or whatever you call it. All these plans that governments are putting in place, and actually, you can see actually these are comparisons that I put together of the amounts that each country has committed to relief packages to COVID-19. While Spain is committed to 13.7 of the GDP, you can see that US has committed 15% overall of the 4 packages they have announced so far. And Germany, I should have written DE, not GR, because that seems gross. But Germany is committed 19% of GDP. And actually, this is quite interesting to compare. Not only the amounts, but also how these packages are delivered. And this follows the logic. Do you remember in class how we talked about the different welfare systems and how the market, I mean, we didn't really go in depth into this, but obviously in the Anglo-Saxon system, the market and the private sector has also a bigger role than in other welfare states. And in terms of managing and deploy, I mean, making these welfare packages or these relief packages getting to the people, we can see how Anglo-Saxon countries are using formula that get companies involved, while other systems are turning, well, also to companies, not all of it, but also to direct benefits for the people that are channeled directly through the people. So it's quite interesting how these welfare packages follow the logic of these stratified welfare states. Of course, that's been understood. We can have the continental, the Anglo-Saxon, and also the Scandinavian models. In terms of social policies, this relates only to Spain. In terms of what social policies have been put in place, so out of that, almost 14% of GDP that is being committed to the relief package, what is being done so far in Spain? Actually, some measures. I mean, here I'm just mentioning some of the ones that have been included. The first one is the mortgages German delay of the mortgage by the end of the day, and how people can delay the payment. I mean, this is not that they are not going to be paying back to the bank what they owe, but actually they can't postpone this payment, at least up until the end of the year. And obviously there's money needed there to sustain the bank system. It also is in social security contributions. People will not have to pay certain taxes, particularly self-employed. Short-time working, this means that actually companies can opt for reducing the working hours of people. So obviously they will readjust as well the salaries, and the government will have to compensate the worker for that income that he's not making. Actually, I told you the previous class that Germany used this during the previous crisis, during the 2008 crisis, and it worked really well for them. What else? 0% interest credits for rent payments. People with certain conditions in terms of income, they can opt for this, so they can actually ask for a 0% interest credit loan. Yeah, a loan that we'll have to pay in a 10-year period of time. And last but not least, and these still being discussed and these still have not been implemented, a living wage for those more vulnerable. So actually, just for the sake of being a citizen, you will be entitled to a living wage that will allow you to survive at least through the economic crisis. And this goes beyond unemployment benefits that obviously is still there for those that are made redundant. Last thing that I'm going to comment about is ERTES, expedientes de regulación temporal de empleo. These are temporary employment expediente de regulación regulation. By the end of the day, this formula, what it makes is allows companies to suspend job contracts. So in a crisis situation as this one, you can activate this clause and you suspend your job contracts, so you don't have to pay your employees during the crisis. And obviously people are not working, and it has to do with the suspension of the economic activity. And who's paying the salary? 70% of the salary is the government. And obviously this is a big part of where the money of the relief funds are going. And well, the good thing about this is actually that prevents the destruction of employment, because the contracts are being suspended, they are not broken. And in return to opting for this clause that actually has benefits for the companies, because they can resume economic activity as soon as the crisis is over. In return, they will have to keep that job contract for 6 months after the crisis is over. So overall, this is another formula to try to keep people from going companies for going bankruptcy, and on the other hand, also employees for losing their jobs. So the final question is, what will the future be like? I mean, and here we don't know. We will have a lot to do, obviously, and this is a debate that pundits are having nowadays on TV. It will have to do a lot with how fast we can find vaccines or effective treatments to COVID-19, and how fast we can go back to normality. I can tell you right now that we are already in the de-escalation phase in Spain. So that means actually from this weekend, we will be able to go out and do sports. From the 11th, we'll be able to have social contact. So today with small groups and some economic activity will resume. And it's expected that by the end of June, we'll go back to what they call the new normality. So actually, the economic recovery will depend on that. And this is what I was saying before, whether it will be a V shape and a rapid recovery, a U shape, that it will take a little bit more time, but then we'll fast forward, so to say, to where we were before, or whether it will be an L and actually GDP will struggle during a few years to go back to where it was in 2019. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this class. I'll see you again on Monday, and we're almost getting to the end of the semester, so expect an email from me next week regarding preparation for the last 2 weeks and also for the final exam. So see you and have a nice weekend.